We got this story from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Yes, Wawa's decision to close 2 stores is a dire statement about public safety in Philadelphia. Despite assertions to the contrary, the move by the locally based convenience store chain speaks volumes about the state of crime in the city. I'll just give you my personal story in the state of crime in the city. We didn't live in Philly. We live just across the bridge. We're in South Jersey, 5 minutes away from the bridge. When the riots happened and what they call the Summer of Love, the 529 insurrection, I thought we were fine. I'm like, well, we're not in Philly. We got the river. There's people aren't going to. No, I heard the helicopters. I heard the sirens. The rioters crossed the bridge. All of a sudden now I'm sitting here thinking, I'm not going to sit around here and wait for this level of violence and this crime. So we decided to leave. We came down to the tri-state area here, West Virginia, Harper's Ferry. And since then, what we've seen out of Philadelphia has been horrifying. I mean, as soon as we got out, we saw the story of the guy holed up in his house shooting at cops. We're hearing you had the Wawa where everyone went in and started ransacking everything. Now Wawa is leaving. We see this in Portland too. They just shut down, I think it's the Pearl District Starbucks because of crime. Not that, it was only a few months ago, they announced 16 other stores nationwide be shutting down because crime is skyrocketing. So what's going on, man? Why is crime through the roof? What can you do about it? What can we do about it?
It's funny, crime comes up a lot in the federal Senate races, but there's nothing a federal senator can do at the state level for crime in a state.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it's a bit disingenuous when they talk about, they're going to bring, law and order back. It's like, dude, constitutionally, how do you do that exactly? But a governor has a lot to say about it. The irony is, of course, my opponent is the attorney general. He's been in that job for 6 years, and he's got one job, enforcing law and order, and he's failed on his watch. John Adams said facts are stubborn things. And so let me just give you some facts. I'm not a politician. I don't do sound bites like that. But the fact is crime has gone up nearly 40% on his watch.
Statewide?
Statewide.
Wow.
We're the 4th highest in fentanyl deaths. Rebby and I were there in Kensington a couple weeks ago. I'll have Reb describe our experience there. Homicides, we're looking at on track for about 600 this year. It's about 430 as of today. 1,000 carjackings, 4,400 robberies, a couple thousand shootings. The gravediggers in Philadelphia said they can't keep up burying the dead teenagers. Wow. And my opponent can't run on his record, and sadly, thank God for that we have alternate outlets like you guys, because the traditional media covers for him. Because if that was a Republican, there'd be breathless reporting on how this person had failed the people, the state, and turned his backs on it. Instead of doing his job and trying to protect the people, we saw the mayhem in the Wawa and the Mayfair district.
That's crazy.
We saw the shooting after a football game in Roxborough, another safe area of Philly. We saw a carjacking outside in Chester County, outside of Philly, of a mom and a daughter going to school and being carjacked at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, man. I mean it's heartbreaking. Real people are suffering, and so what can I do about it? And number one, we're going to become a law and order state, because Shapiro is part of the Defund the Police group. He's friends with BLM and Antifa, so they'll know that their governor has their back. And then secondly, be working with the General Assembly to make sure they're fully funded. We'll expand the number of police we have on the ground. We need more. The people in Kensington and Philadelphia are asking for more presence. And then finally, I'll be surging special prosecutors into Philly with the authorization of the House and Senate, because there are constitutional powers. Josh Shapiro was given that authorization and he refused to use it. And instead of putting criminals in jail, he's worked with the Wolf administration to release about 10,000. I know Fetterman's getting hit on the head a lot about how he's voted to release on the parole board, all these murders and what have you. Josh Shapiro is also on that board.
Yeah, look, it's one thing. There was a tweet I saw. It was Tim Ryan saying he wants to reduce the prison population in Ohio. Immediately, there's this knee-jerk reaction from a lot of people on the right saying, like, wow, that's devastating and bad. But the first thing he says is he wants to get marijuana off the schedule. And there's a big difference between people who are in jail for non-violent drug offenses and people who are convicted of murder. The thing about Fetterman is that many of the people he's actually talked about getting out are people who are convicted of murder. Granted, he says, oh, it was a wrong conviction, or it was wrong for this reason or that reason, or there are protests. Okay, well, that is you talking about people who are convicted of murder. And I fully respect if someone's in, prison and they're innocent and you can prove it, they should be released. Absolutely. It should never happen like that. But it's not the same as, for Fetterman, if he wants to come out and say nonviolent drug offenses should not be handled this way, then I'm like, okay, all right, right on.
Key distinction.
Right. The problem is you look at New York and those other places and they're letting out violent offenders. There was a story about a guy who had committed 40 robberies, laughing, saying, you keep letting me out and I keep doing it. Yep. That's the problem.
Agree.
Yeah, there's an important distinction to make here because personally, I'm for criminal justice reform, especially when it comes to victimless crimes. But at the same time, what they're doing is absolutely absurd. It's absolutely crazy. It's almost as if they really deliberately want to make the situation as unbearable and as bad as possible on the streets. And you see a huge rise in crime, specifically where George Soros has invested into the attorney generals, into the district attorneys, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like Shapiro got 2 donations for his campaigns twice from George Soros and has been supported by him.
That is a fact, and so we are in Kensington, and so that's the only open air drug market in America. And you want to share your insight?
Well, there's a lot more in San Francisco and New York City now, and LA.
The biggest one in America.
Yeah, and it was heartbreaking because honestly, for the people that are trying to live there and just be safe and raise a family, there is no safe place. You know, even in their homes, there's shootings and the bullets go in. And the kids, one grandmother raising 5 kids by herself said they know the difference between a firecracker and a gunshot, you know, and they know what to do. They know to run upstairs and lay flat on the floor. And I think the youngest one's like 5 years old. The other thing is the school's just locked down because of some sort of crime, and the parents aren't told why the school's locked down. So now your kids, you know, are locked in and not able to come home, but you don't know if it's an internal or an external. You don't know what the problem is. And so there's just a lot of fear that it's instilling into the parents because they don't know every day if their kids are going to come
What
home.
happens when a school gets locked down? Like, how long is it locked down for?
I think various times from what she was telling us. We talked to different people when we were down there, but her story was it just keeps happening. It's something that's almost weekly, and it varies. You know, it might just be, you know, for an hour because they heard there was something in the vicinity, and so they were trying to keep the kids in before they let them out, you know, to head home. But you know, sometimes it's internal, and if that's the case, I don't know how long that might be. Might be for hours.
What I don't get is that when this kind of stuff happens, the only thing I hear from your modern liberal or leftist is it's the guns that's the problem. And I'm like, well, it's crime, it's criminals.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, Pennsylvania is pretty good on gun laws, I'm told. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean,
I haven't lived there.
Most of the state obviously is strongly advocating for Second Amendment. You know, there's one of the most restrictive cities, you know, in a nation is Philadelphia, and it hasn't done them very good. So.
But it's my understanding is it's still not nearly as restrictive as all of New Jersey. Because you know, I'm living in the Jersey side,
true.
and
that's absolutely true.
They're giving you warnings.
Yeah.
But I bring this up because this means that. You know, I heard a story about people in Philadelphia and they're armed and everything's fine. They go to Jersey and all of a sudden they're getting arrested. And I'm like, wait, regular law-abiding citizens are armed in Philadelphia? And well, yeah.
If you're pulled over, you got a Pennsylvania plate. Don't answer any questions in Jersey if you have a weapon on you.
But I mean,
I plead the fifth.
the issue clearly is not the guns or the gun owners. The issue is clearly the criminals. And, you know, it's one of the reasons I didn't want to be in New Jersey because of how insane the laws were. I was told that if someone, look, I was 5 minutes from the bridge. We would drive 5 minutes and you could see Philadelphia. You look out the window and you can see the buildings and everything. And I was told in Jersey that if someone broke into my house, I had a duty to retreat from my own home in Jersey. And I'm like,
That's nuts.
Where do you retreat to?
Thank you.
I'm like, do I jump out the window and run barefoot in my boxers down the street? Yes. Because they were like, is that better than killing someone? And I'm like, dude, if someone's threatening my life, I could be out in the winter in my bare. That's nuts. So I look at Philadelphia and I'm told the laws are better.
So we do have the castle doctrine in Pennsylvania, of course. When you can only open fire and engage a villain, a potential perpetrator when they're in your house, and that's when the laws are completely in your hands.
What about
if
on
you're
the
governor?
porch?
Just really quickly, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, on the porch, is that in the house?
No.
It's gotta be in the
and
doors?
you got to make sure it's far enough in that if the gunshot throws them back, they're not out, right?
So if their hands on the door's cracked open, that's not enough.
They have to be in before you can engage
all
them.
the way in.
Where was that story where the angry ex-boyfriend, do you see this one, tried banging on the door and tried breaking the door open and the dad shot through the door?
Oh, yes.
That wasn't Pennsylvania, was
I
it?
don't think it was.
I don't think so. I don't remember that story specifically. But if you're governor, how would you approach the Second Amendment? What action would you take on it?
Well, obviously, we'll become a Second Amendment sanctuary state. I'll be signing into law some of the bills I actually have in.
Thank you.
I like that.
Yeah.
And so I'll be signing into law I don't know if I'll go far as nukes, but clearly not.
I was telling him before the show how I'm like, hey man, the Second Amendment says arms, and
Yeah.
we have to amend it if we want to get specific. But
Would you be okay for constitutional carry?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually,
Wow.
I'm a co-sponsor
Sweet.
of that bill in the Senate.
Great,
Yep.
man.
awesome.
Good work.
Addition-
We're constitutional carry in West Virginia. It's fantastic.
It needs to be that way, and I don't even get why we have a Second Amendment right, and I have to pay $25 to
Oh,
get a
it's
license
absurd.
every couple of years.
It's absurd.
Isn't it? I was like, are you
Yeah.
kidding
Yep.
me? Additionally, I have a bill, and I'm a prime sponsor of in the Senate. I hope to sign into law when I'm governor. I will actually, where it will prohibit law enforcement within Pennsylvania from cooperating with the federals if Joe Biden comes in to enforce unconstitutional laws on the Second
love it.
Amendment.
Nice, man.
Yeah. So the nuclear weapons thing is, it's more of a cultural point using something that's relatively shocking. First, private companies, private entities can have nukes. I mean, you've got major weapons manufacturers that fill out the forms. I forgot what it was called. We talked to a guy who had an FFL, and he explained there's a form for nuclear weapons. And when the Second Amendment was written, you could have a frigate, you could have a man of war, you could have a private warship, and you could actually contract with the government. And that's what we have today with private military contractors and weapons manufacturers. So I think if people are concerned about a private citizen getting access to biological or nuclear weapons, instead of just deciding one day that the Constitution doesn't matter, we should actually say, okay, well, let's amend the Constitution as we were supposed to do. It's more of a point that over a long enough period of time, people seem okay with the fact that the Constitution has been eroded.
That's the whole point of, I think, that's probably the most important thing that I've heard today, is that we're seeing infringements on our rights through a thousand little cuts here and there.
Exactly.
And instead of doing the right thing and saying, okay, do you have a Second Amendment right or not, and approaching it from a constitutional amendment process, it's being circumvented by laws and by bureaucrats and bureaucracy and what have you. And additionally, another piece of legislation that'll be signed into law, of course, is reciprocity, recognizing people's right from other states coming through.
That's amazing. I'm glad to hear it. I love the constitutional carry stuff.
It's too easy. It's very clear to me. I mean, so we know what the U.S. Constitution says, should not be infringed. The Pennsylvania Constitution says that your right to keep and bear arms shall not be questioned. Wow.
Really?
Yes. That's beautiful.
Yeah, legal
But-
law-abiding citizens shouldn't be treated like criminals.
That's
It's a
right.
simple. It's a simple idea.
Yep.
But so constitutional carry. But let's get a little into the nitty gritty, I guess. What about limitations on magazine size, or if you're saying it's a sanctuary state? I mean, how does that apply to, say, the NFA, like selective fire rifles, fully automatic weapons?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I haven't gone that far, but I am troubled by the limitations, because we even seen Joe Biden talk about handguns, and having more than 6 rounds. That would be a revolver. He doesn't even know what he's talking about half
Yeah,
the time.
seriously.
There's
So that it's illegal, that you could be arrested in New Jersey because you have a 30-round magazine. Are you kidding me? I mean, really? I mean, most veterans have some of those left over from the M16 days. I mean,
true.
And not just that, there was a viral video where it was in Italy, I think. You're only allowed to have 3 rounds, and this woman, I think it was a woman, got attacked by a boar, and then fired 3 times, and the boar did not stop.
Oh, crap.
And so people are like, this is why. But you look at what happened. Someone tweeted, what am I supposed to do when 30 to 50 feral hogs come into my, my yard? And then all of the liberal anti-gun people are laughing as if it's not a real problem. And it is. They don't understand, people get in helicopters and fly around having to cull the boar population because they're dangerous and they destroy the environment. But these people don't understand that. They live in New York where there is no boar problem, and then vote for you to be hobbled when you do have a boar problem.
It's nice when you're living in a little bubble somewhere, and safe and cozy, and you have good Wi-Fi and good transportation, and you have a private jet. The rest of us, so it's kind of, you mentioned a boar, and we lived in Germany for 10 years, and so I was out with our son and a couple of his friends when they were little kids, and it's an old quarry in Germany, and all of a sudden this boar came jumping off of the top of the quarry and bounded off the walls and came straight for us, and all the kids were running, and I'm like, what do you do? And so I stepped on a rock and stared at it, and it lifted its snout, looked me in the eyes, and then veered away. It worked. They said, stare the animal down, and he veered right in front of me. And
Did you make your shoulders big or anything?
I'm just naturally big
Yeah,
that
you're
way.
huge. How tall are you? You're
6'2".
Yeah, you got to finish.
But I was standing on a rock because I hopped on a rock, so he increased my height, and he did veer away.
Do you think there's value to having different gun laws in cities and in rural areas? Or do you just kind of keep it?
I don't. I do
uniform?
believe that the Second Amendment should be consistent across, whether you're city or rural. The lawlessness in Philly. I mean, if that mom had a sidearm with her and a carjacker came, she could have put him out of his misery instead of being terrorized and what have you.
I honestly think there wouldn't be a carjacking
That's
because
true.
people would be like, I better not even try because this woman's probably
I
armed.
remember in the 70s, I had an aunt that lived in Florida, and we go visit her down in Vero Beach, and we were told don't beep at people back then because they might just shoot you. So
Yeah, an armed society is a polite society, and we have to understand it's basic principle. You respect other people. You don't freak out. You don't curse at people. You don't try to attack people. You don't try to steal their stuff or violate their rights. And as long as you do that, you'll be fine. But again, we also have to understand the criminals will always find guns. They will always have things like machine guns. They will always have 30-round magazines. And if the general public is limited to let's say 5 rounds, right? A criminal knows that when he's robbing a store, the clerk only has 5 rounds. So if I'm in a shootout with him, 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shot, 4 shot, 5 shot, he has to reload. My turn to get him now. And it puts the average citizen at a disadvantage when criminals who don't follow the law anyway will violate it, and of course will use it in order to justify the punishment against the average law-abiding human being.
Amen.
I'm just tired of even hearing it and saying it because it is basic arithmetic. It is so rudimentary. It is 1 + 1 = 2. If citizens can't have guns and criminals are already breaking the law, you're basically just saying the people who don't care about the law can carry weapons. It's just 1 + 1 = 2. And everybody listening to the show knows it. Everybody at this table knows it. And we keep saying it, but it doesn't resonate with these people who are trying to ban guns, that the people, only law-abiding people are going to pay attention to those laws.
Yeah.
How do you solve this?
And the bottom line, do we have a Second Amendment right or not? And if we don't, then do a constitutional convention and not come here and slowly strip away these rights here and there. Because you're right, when you take the weapons away from the innocent, from the citizens, of course, then only the criminals will be armed. And we've seen that over and over again. You look at Chicago. I mean,
I'm from Chicago.
Oh, the wild, wild west, man.
Mm-hmm. And this is why I always tell my friends who aren't from the city why you don't get involved in road rage incidents. Why, like, I'll be driving with a friend and someone will cut him off and start wailing on the horn and flipping him off, and I'll be like, "You want to die?" Because you never know if who you're flipping off is going to be some gangbanger who's looking for trouble. Yep. It's a city where the criminals, the people who are intent on committing crimes or who outright just don't care about the law, are the ones who are armed. You never know. So it's funny. An armed society is a polite society. Well, in that respect, in Chicago, don't pick fights unless you know for sure. Or don't pick fights, outright. And then don't get into a fight, even if it's unless you know your circumstances. So what I mean by that is, if someone is getting up in your face and they're threatening you, the fight you've always won is the fight you've avoided, is the saying. Chicago's a place where I've seen people get into fights that it's just like, you want to talk smack about me, put up your dukes, and the guy goes, okay, and pulls out a gun, and they're going to be criminals. And the other issue is, if they have a gun, these people are more likely to hurt you with it as opposed to your law-abiding citizen who does not want that fight. So that's why I've, especially growing up in Chicago, I've just been like, we'd be better off if the people were scared to come near me to commit a crime because I'd be armed. Because I'm telling you, all the criminals are armed as it is. They make videos of themselves waving the guns around, and all we can do is cower and cross our fingers and hope they're not going to shoot us. That's how crazy it gets. For the most part, you don't got to worry about getting shot in Chicago. A lot of people seem to think that because it's really bad, you're like walking down the street and bullets are flying everywhere. I'll tell you how bad it is. It's south side of Chicago, going to bed and hearing gunshots. It's getting a call from your friend and saying, I'm seeing some guy drag a body down the alley. Those things actually happened in my life. It's getting off of 290 on Independence and then someone driving past and just pointing a gun and shooting at my car for no reason. That's what Chicago's like. But those are a handful of incidents in the 20 plus years before I finally moved out. So, some people have this idea that you go to Chicago and then every day you're going to be getting shot at. No, but should you ever, you're not going to be happy about it, right? Mm-hmm. So something's got to change. Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.